Hello, everyone. This is LDS Women Thriving. Good to see you today. And today I have an awesome guest. Her name is Erica Glenn. And I have a couple of things to share about her. So Dr. Erica Glenn is a globally engaged conductor, composer, and scholar, and the current director of choral activities at Brigham Young University, Hawaii. In 2021, Dr. Glenn became the national finalist for the American Prize in Conducting. In 2025, she will conduct the premiere of her original Worldwide Requiem for choir orchestra at Carnegie Hall. Dr. Glenn holds a doctorate in conducting from Arizona State, a master's in music composition, Longy Conservatory, I believe that's how you say it, and a master's in education from Harvard, which is awesome. All of those awesome qualifications. Prior to her full-time appointment at Brigham Young University, Hawaii, she taught at Dean College, the D.C. Kennedy Center, Seoul Arts Academy in Manhattan, Arizona State University, where she received her Teaching Excellence Award, and the American International School of Utah, where she worked in senior management and founded 6 award-winning choirs. Dr. Glenn was a 2023 American Council Scholar in Estonia, a 2022 Fulbright Scholar to Poland, and she has won several national grants for musicological research throughout Eastern Europe, Ukraine, Russia, Georgia, Bulgaria. She's a frequent guest speaker and conductor at conferences and festivals, and she has published with Santa Barbara Music, Tactus Magazine, LazyBee Scripts, Pelican Music, and USA Today. Wow.
Thanks for the introduction.
Anything else you would add to that for our listeners to get to know you?
Oh, well, first of all, it's just so nice to be here. Thanks for providing this space for women to have important conversations. And I think that pretty much covers my professional resume. I grew up in Utah in Pleasant Grove, very, very immersed in the arts and piano, singing, dance, musical theater, composition. Spent some time as an undergraduate backpacking through Western Europe, which really kind of ignited my love of travel. Served a mission in Donetsk, Ukraine, which was profoundly transformative and has affected a lot of my musicological research. Wrote a musical at one point that went to the New York Musical Theater Festival and was later performed at the American Repertory Theater in Boston. So I've had a lot of experiences all across the arts, but I would say that my primary love is teaching and mentoring. I worked as a teacher at the Franklin School for the Performing Arts in Massachusetts for several years. As you mentioned, I helped open the American International School of Utah and founded the Performing Arts program there. And then in connection with my students, I actually went over to Bulgaria and was part of a Bulgarian chamber music festival, and also did some research in Russia that same summer into how music can be a therapeutic tool with orphans who have reactive attachment disorder. So it's interesting how one season of my life has sort of led to the next in ways that I never could have foreseen. From there, I ended up doing a doctorate in conducting and leading the ASU Women's Chorus, founding the ASU Women's Collaborative. Ended up doing further research and language study in Georgia, Tbilisi, as well as in Ukraine, right before the war broke out, actually, just a year or so before. And then, of course, COVID hit and changed life for all of us. And so I sort of became a temporary expert in leading COVID choirs, leading rehearsals online, putting together virtual choir videos. And that was how I was hired originally at BYU-Hawaii, was to lead the choirs virtually. And then I came in as a visiting professor, and now I'm here as a full-time tenure track faculty member. So just loving it here in Hawaii. I have amazing students from over 70 countries worldwide.
Oh, wow.
It's an incredibly diverse space. And as you mentioned, I was just asked to guest conduct a piece I'm writing called the Worldwide Requiem at Carnegie Hall with my choirs. And it's going to be dedicated. Each movement will be a requiem to a different area of the world that has experienced a major tragedy, and will be written in the language of that area of the world. So you can kind of see how my love of cultures and history and language and music and service have all intertwined in unique ways throughout my life. And here I am now sitting in my living room in Haula on Oahu.
That's so awesome. I respect all that you've been able to do so much. And also, I think in general, just you've been able to accomplish a lot of things and participate in a lot of cool opportunities that have come to you. Like you said, just over the years, just doors opening, right? And it sounds like you've had the bravery to walk through all those doors and just make it happen, even if some of these things might have been a little bit more intimidating. So awesome. I'm going to ask you a few questions, and we're going to start with you just named a bunch of experiences you've had as a single adult, but what have been, if you could name maybe your top few favorite experiences of all time that you've been able to do during these single years that you don't feel like maybe you could have had the same opportunity otherwise?
Right, sure. Well, first of all, I'll just say I don't think any of us can plan our lives from the outset as much as we would like to. And, we're so eager to rely on things, and I mean, with good reason, to rely on things like patriarchal blessings to kind of give us a blueprint for how we should live our lives. And but the truth is that God isn't a scriptwriter. He gives us guidelines, and he inspires us along the way. And what I found in my life is that the places I've ended up are far richer and more fulfilling than anything I could have designed on my own. I am by nature very type A. I like to be a planned out kind of person, but I feel like life has taught me by necessity that you have to be kind of flexible. And if you aren't, as you say, open to some of the opportunities that are a little bit unexpected, then it keeps really beautiful things from unfolding in your life. And so I just feel profound gratitude for a lot of the experiences I've had. I mean, recently, just as one example, I ended up in Poland working with Ukrainian refugees. And to kind of set this up, I served my mission in Ukraine, as I mentioned. I went back in 2019 because I was conducting musicological research into the life and the history of Stefania Turkiewicz, who is considered Ukraine's first female composer. And I sort of helped rediscover her life story and some of her lost autographed manuscripts. And I realized I spoke Russian on my mission because I served in the eastern part of Ukraine, the area that's been hit hardest by the war, actually. And I realized that I needed to learn Ukrainian for my research. And so I spent 3 months in Ukraine learning Ukrainian, traveling the country. And then the following summer, so that was 2019, the following summer, COVID happened, and I had a language grant that summer. And I thought, well, what's a language that's kind of close to Ukrainian that I could study? And I thought, let's study Polish. Why not? I mean, it was truly like drawing something out of a hat. And literally months after I spent a summer studying Polish, the war broke out in Ukraine. And I had been given a Fulbright grant to conduct research in Ukraine. And everybody from Ukraine who was on this Fulbright scholarship had to be relocated to Poland. And I was told at the point, I hadn't gone out yet, but I was told you can either just cancel your research grant or you can come to Poland instead and change your research, kind of, pivot and come up with a new research project. And it was sort of this like profoundly spiritual experience for me, because it was like, oh my gosh, I have exactly the tools I need to go to Warsaw, which is where, they were locating the Fulbrighters, and do some real good, because I speak Russian, I speak Ukrainian, I had studied Polish by that point. And I had also, as I mentioned, done research in Russia with orphans that have reactive attachment disorder, using music as a therapeutic tool. And music was exactly what these people needed. So I got IRB approval to go to Warsaw and to conduct a very different kind of research project than the one I had been planning on. I interviewed Ukrainian refugees about their experiences with music, how it was sort of a tool of solidarity and a morale builder. I talked to them about the songs that were most meaningful to them, among which, of course, were things like the Ukrainian national anthem. But they also mentioned pieces like Czerwona Kalina, which is a song about a red flower that kind of rises up and then gets trampled, but every time it's trampled, it rises again, and it becomes a metaphor for Ukraine. And I learned that song, you know, sitting at the piano in refugee centers with refugees gathered around me, teaching me the chords and the melody. And then I came home later and wrote an arrangement of that for choir that just got published by Santa Barbara Music. But anyway, again, it was just sort of like a confirmation that if we are putting ourselves in places where God can use us, if we are actively developing skills, God will take those skills and use them in really wonderful ways. It's like, you know, for great purposes, he uses the small and simple things like me. And my desire to randomly learn Polish one summer, you know? So I certainly think about experiences I've had like that. I was able to research just this past summer the Estonian singing revolution in Estonia, which is a really profound period in history. I mean, Estonia is the only country that managed to separate from the Soviet Union in a completely bloodless way. And they did so through the use of music as a unifying tool. And I got to attend, they have choral festivals that are the largest choral festivals in the world. They're in Estonia. I got to attend the youth music festival while I was there. And just seeing, I mean, I think they had a total of 10,000 singers on stage at once. Just witnessing something cultural like that on such a grand scale is really transformative. And really showcases the power of music, the power of the thing that I have chosen to dedicate my life to. And the fact that it's not just, you know, to kind of bring individuals hope and peace, which it certainly does, but it's also to kind of mobilize nations and provide, you know, refugees and those suffering from adverse social situations with something to hold on to. So that's been wonderful. And of course, I've just met incredible people along the way from around the world. I've collaborated with wonderful musicians from around the world. You know, my little high school choirs when I was teaching high school were featured in a PBS special with Dallin Bayless, who has become a dear, dear friend. Met wonderful performers through the New York Musical Festival who have gone on to perform in national tours and on Broadway, and we've stayed connected. And one of the Broadway stars that I conducted when I was out in New York at the Marvin Hamlish Broadway Conductors Workshop, when I did that, then came later as the guest performer for the American International School of Utah. And he played Jean Valjean for something like 20 years on Broadway. And he sang as the guest soloist. And my high schoolers got the opportunity to kind of be his backup singers in this grand concert that we pulled together. So I don't know. It's really lovely to see the way the disparate threads of my life kind of pull together for unexpected things, you know, unexpected good, unexpected events at different times in my life. And again, because I'm a teacher and a mentor at heart, I love seeing the way that this positively impacts the life of my wonderful students.
It sounds like the Lord has provided opportunities and even like promptings to you, like to learn Polish to make it so that your life is more fulfilling and that things have the ability to fall into place like they have.
Yeah, well, and I really believe in this idea that we are kind of commanded to do many good things of our own free will, because I honestly don't even know that it was a prompting to study Polish. It could have been, but it also could have just been me saying, I'm going to do something productive with this season in my life. And then God seeing that I had done something productive and saying, hey, I can use that. You know, I can put that to good use.
I like that. But you take the initiative to do something. And it's amazing. It's amazing how it all just kind of comes together to make a life that is so fulfilling, so productive, and so full of joy, where you're connecting with some amazing people from around the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now for you, like, do you feel like this time being a single LDS woman, that it has influenced who you are today and your confidence, and in what ways do you feel like your opportunities during all these single years have built who you are?
Yeah, I mean, First of all, I think it has given me a real sense of efficacy, which I think is important for all of us as human beings, to believe that we actually have the capacity and the power to make a difference in the world, even if it's in small ways, even if it's just in our own, small sphere of experience, whatever that sphere is. And I mean, again, because I think I've just been willing, for better or for worse, I'm always on the go, and I think I'm willing to try new things and jump in and fail sometimes. And that's provided me with opportunities to see that, multiple failures ultimately lead to success. And sometimes you just have to keep at it. And so I think it's built a lot of resilience in me. And then just the sheer variety of experiences that I've had, because I'm interested in so many different things, have broadened my horizons in really important ways. And because many of these experiences have taken place on foreign soil, among cultures that are dissimilar to my own culture, I think they've broadened my perspective of people, of cultures, given me exposure to a wide variety of those things, and also in the process expanded my creative capacities and allowed for really meaningful musical and cultural interchange and collaboration. And then I should also mention that on the flip side, it can be hard to retain a sense of confidence in things like your ability to form eternal relationships when you go for a really long time remaining single, right? I mean, I think I feel confident in my ability to form deep friendships. I think I feel confident in my, immediate family relationships. And I feel very, very blessed by the rich tapestry of friendships that I've encountered. But we do receive a lot of messaging about the kind of primary importance of that one eternal relationship, right? And so that can be a little bit discouraging, and that can be hard. And one thing that I wish we emphasized more was the importance of relationships of all kinds. And the fact that, yes, like an eternal relationship is very important, and it's something that we always want to be seeking for. But for everyone, that happens on a different timeline, and that's really okay. And the truth is that over half of the global population of the church is single now. I mean, that's a pretty staggering fact, right? So we're not the outliers. We're actually the majority. We're actually the norm, right? And so we need to actually normalize that. We need to normalize this idea that people are going to find that relationship on their own timeline. And for some people, it may be after this life. And that doesn't mean that this life is a waste. And it doesn't mean that this life is a holding ground. It means that we get to do really important things in this life that, as you mentioned, we might not be able to if we had gotten married when we were young.
I love it. You're very articulate with your words, and I love how you just described all of that, because I feel like there's a lot of single women in the church that feel almost like they're failing at their role as a woman in this life, where, it's expected you need to be a wife and a mother, and that's a wonderful thing. And for the most part, most women desire that. But like you mentioned, sometimes it's not an opportunity that comes right when you want it, right when you're early 20s. And how do you think that perspective can change? And how do you think that how do you think that we can adjust that perspective?
I love that you brought up this idea of people feeling like they've failed, because I think this is something that really needs to be addressed, right? Nobody has failed by not being married, or by becoming divorced, or by finding themselves in a situation that isn't quote unquote the ideal. Because I mean, honestly, that's life. There is no perfect blueprint. We're all unique individuals. Marriage is a really complicated thing that involves two people, not just us. The timing has to be right. The setting has to be right. And I think what makes me sad is when people fundamentally feel lesser than, or feel like there's something wrong with them, because there's nothing wrong with them. And in fact, I think in many instances, our heavenly parents are sitting there watching us and saying, don't just sit here feeling sad. We understand that this is, a heartache and a burden for many people, but let us help you lighten that, and let us help you be actively engaged in all of the good that you can do and kind of stepping into your role in the world, which is so much more complex and broad than like a single title, right? I mean, I think even those who are wives and mothers would describe themselves as many other things too. You know, they are musicians, or they are teachers, or they are, you know, we are so many things as human beings, and we have to lean into those things rather than pulling away from them just because, you know, the title that we want maybe hasn't fallen into place yet. And I don't think that singlehood, and this might be a slightly controversial statement, but I don't think it has to be a plan B. I think people often see singlehood as a fallback, like, well, my plan A didn't come through, therefore I have to settle for something lesser. If we leaned into, and I mean, life is long, right? And the eternities are even longer. There is so much time for everything, all the richness that God wants us to experience to fall into place. In fact, there is infinite time, right? We are not in a shortage. You know, this isn't a zero-sum game. Instead, this is a game of abundance, and this is a life of abundance. And we can live in that abundance no matter where we are in our journey. And if we find ourselves in a period of time where we are single, it doesn't have to be, oh, dang it, I am living my plan B. It can be, okay, this is my plan A for now. How can I really capitalize on this? How can I use this period to, as you say, be flexible and go where God wants me to go without perhaps the other responsibilities that come along with having a spouse and a family, right? Which are good responsibilities, but they are, you know, holy tethers. Whereas I have the ability to get up and go to a different country every summer to conduct research or to be involved in meaningful musical projects. And that can do great good for us, for others, for the worldwide church. And I think really leaning into that as a kind of a gift that God gives us sometimes is an important way to begin reframing the conversation.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you very much for your thoughts. In terms of, because as I'm sure you understand, and all of those that are listening, understand that there comes in waves where there's sometimes where it hits you and you're like, wow, I feel really lonely. I really wish I had someone with me.
Yeah.
And other times where you're like, I'm flying high. I can do this forever. This is great. I'm having all these amazing experiences. On those more low moments, what are some things that you do or some advice that you'd give to anyone that is struggling and is having a hard time with this phase of life and needs to pick me up?
Well, I mean, first of all, I just want to validate that, right? It's okay for it to be hard. And human beings are social creatures, and living alone can be really hard. We're not really wired for that. So, I mean, for example, right now I'm looking at getting a puppy because I would really like another living thing in my house with me. And I think going back to what I was talking about before about kind of the rich tapestry of relationships we have in our lives, I think we need to lean into this idea that, you know, even in marriage, a spouse doesn't fulfill all of our needs, right? We need to have lots of friendships. We need friendships with other women. We need friendships with and mentoring relationships with children. We need, there's so much that can form this really rich tapestry of support and connection, like deep connection, emotional connection, and all forms of connection. And so I don't think we should underplay, for example, deep friendships as an important form of connection. And I don't think that has to feel like something secondary to a marriage relationship. I think it can feel like a really fulfilling relationship at certain points in our lives. And I think that's great. And I think we all need each other in those ways. And I love the idea that in the church, it's not like we just seal together little family units and then we're done. Like, okay, this little nuclear family is sealed. Great. Let's go on to the next nuclear family. And we're all going to kind of exist in these little bubbles after this life. What we're actually
Yeah.
doing, in the grand work that we do in the temples is we are literally sealing together the entire human family, every single individual connected to everybody else. And for those that are single, they are connected to their parents. They're part of this huge tapestry of connection. And I think that rich tapestry of connection is going to continue in the life after this life and in the celestial kingdom. And I think we're going to just sort of be stunned by the rich ways that we all feed off of each other's light in that grand tapestry. So I guess I would just encourage people to try to not think about things in really black and white ways, like either I've succeeded or I've failed, or I will have connection in the eternities or I won't. Because that's just not true, right? It's so much more nuanced and rich than that. And there, as I said before, just reminding ourselves, and it can be hard because we're having a mortal experience, but reminding ourselves that time truly is infinite, right? The eternities are eternal. There is time for everything. There is a way for us to access every rich blessing that God wants us to have, as long as we just sort of take a breath, stay calm, and do what we feel the Spirit prompting us to in the moment, right? And I totally get that is easier said than done. And I have had many moments of tears and frustration and just kind of trying to figure out what my place is in my ward tapestry and in my community tapestry. But again, I come back to that idea of doing many good things of our own free will. And I think rather than waiting for someone to tell us, oh, this is how you fit into the ward, or this is how you fit into your community, or, you will fit in once you're married, kind of divorcing ourselves from that idea and saying instead, no, I belong inherently. I am a child of my heavenly parents, and they have told me that I belong. And I have unique gifts. We all have unique gifts, right? And mine just happened to kind of have gone in the direction of musical things, but everybody has unique gifts to offer. How can we give those gifts to other people in ways that make us intrinsically intertwined with them and an inseparable part of the fabric of, the communities that we are a part of? And again, I know that this is hard, and I highly, recommend that people seek out things like therapeutic support if they need it. I don't think there's any shame in that whatsoever. I think we all need people to kind of talk through things with as we sort out our thoughts. And then, just leaning into this idea that we are all inherently worthy and we all inherently belong.
Beautiful. And I love your use of the word tapestry, of literally we're creating, we're designing, we're developing our lives, and being so interconnected with so many different tapestries and different people. It's just a opportunity to create.
Yes. And one more thing I'll say is that I think we all need to lean into the idea that it's okay to be the exception. And at the same time, I mean, a lot of us feel like the exception. And then when we look at the actual numbers, it's like, oh, we're the rule rather than the exception.
Yes, exactly.
Membership is single, right? But, we all are unique. We all have our own unique life paths. And that's a great thing. That is not a negative thing at all. And in fact, as people navigate their own unique paths, it's really helpful for them, I think, to see people who have also navigated unique paths. I think that's really important. And sometimes, I mean, whether it's just human nature or because we've grown up hearing certain narratives in the church, it can be easy to feel like something is wrong if we're the exception to what seems like a rule. But there's nothing wrong. And sometimes it's really beautiful to hear those stories. And I mean, I can't tell you how many women reached out to me after I gave my Hope Works talk and just said, thank you for being an example of a single female in her 30s who is actively pursuing life and enjoying it. And I mean, it seemed like a really funny thing to be complimented on, right? It's like, I
Yeah.
do anything. I didn't try to do that. I just kind of am who I am, and I happen to be single. It's not like an accomplishment. But it made me realize that there's value in occupying that space kind of like with grace and dignity and gratitude, and being there to support others who find themselves in similar spaces.
And realizing you're at the reins of your own life with a lot of different things.
Yeah.
I love all of these things that you just mentioned. Now, over these past, I don't know how many years since you turned 18, but during your single years, do you have any regrets at all about your time?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there are always those moments where you go, man, what could I have done differently that would have led to me being able to form an eternal companionship, find an eternal companionship, right? But I think human beings can do that endlessly, right? Like there are always things you can ask yourself, did I do something wrong, or could I have done something differently? And the truth is, I don't want to put that burden on myself, nor do I want other people to put that burden on themselves, because, as most of us, I mean, yes, sometimes there are things that we do that we really should regret, right? That we really should seek forgiveness for and change. But more often than not, we're all just kind of doing the best that we can. And we're gods in embryo, but we're very much in embryo, and we're still learning. And I think our heavenly parents are really patient with us. And I think we need to be more patient with ourselves in that process. I think that's important. Like sometimes I wish I'd been more focused on exclusive relationships when I was younger. When I was in college, for example, I was very much like, oh, I'm going on a mission. And, when I served, we served at 21. So I was like, I'm going to finish my undergrad before I go on a mission. So I'm just going to kind of date casually. And I guess I could have been more focused on exclusive dating, but that really would have changed my life trajectory pretty significantly. And it would have kept me from focusing on developing a lot of the talents and skills that I've developed. And it would have kept me from meeting some of the people that have had the most profound impact on my life. And so in retrospect, no, I don't think I really do have any deep regrets. Not to say that there aren't things that I certainly could have done better, as all of us can, but I think I want to keep myself from placing too much of a burden on my own soul in that way, because we're all doing our best, and we're all trying, and we're all really complicated human creatures that are, in some cases, I think, even seeking to understand ourselves. and that's a process, and that's okay.
I love it. No, I feel like you've been very honest in that regard in talking about that, because a lot of people that make mistakes or go through the experiences of trying to learn from their past, it sounds like you've been able to, reconcile where you're at now with everything that you've gone through.
Well, it's a process. And like you say, definite ups and downs, right? There are times when I'm like, okay, I think I feel good about all of this. And then times where, I'll be chatting with another single friend and we'll just kind of commiserate that it's really hard. And we'll give each other permission to feel sad. And it's okay to feel sad. It's okay to experience those emotions. It's okay to struggle sometimes. But ultimately, God wants us to be happy. And I think if there's one message that I could really bring across for people, I think it has a particular resonance for singles, but I think it's good advice for anyone. And that's, give yourself permission to be happy in whatever phase of life you find yourself in. I think sometimes we almost feel like we're not allowed to be happy because we're not single, or because we are single, right? So, for example, it's almost like when someone passes away and you feel a deep sadness, and then you find yourself being happy about something, and you're like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't be happy because I'm still supposed to be sad about the fact that the person that I loved passed
with the words supposed to be.
Yeah,
right.
Right. And the same thing can happen with singlehood. It's like someone can be just having these wonderful, rich experiences and feeling genuinely fulfilled, but then suddenly thinking, oh my gosh, but I'm not married. and I should be wanting that. And if I don't actively want that in this moment, there's something wrong with me, and I need to start feeling sad that I'm not married, right? And I think that's really damaging. I think, as you say, most people do long for an eternal relationship and companionship. I think those are really natural human needs. But as I said, there are lots of ways that we can seek connection, and they don't have to feel like a plan B. And we need to give ourselves permission to find joy and happiness. Man is that he might have joy, right? And we need to give ourselves permission to experience that and find that in every facet of life.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
And for you, I guess the last thing I wanted to ask is, what is the best advice? I mean, you just explained some of the things that you would like to advise the single sisters on in the church, but what is the last piece of advice that you would give them?
Well, in addition to what I just said, I think I would say that sisterhood is a really powerful thing. Women tend to be very emotionally empathetic and able to support each other. And I think, when women celebrate each other's successes and lift one another up and provide emotional support for each other, that can be a really powerful form of connection. I mean, if we're talking specifically about single sisters rather than singles in general, men and women, right? I think we're a little bit maybe better off than the men are in some ways, just because women tend towards forming those kinds of connections and deep friendships with each other. And I'm really grateful for that in my own life, right? I'm grateful for all of the deep friendships that I experience, for all of the women that lift me up and that I strive to lift up. And I would just say, as long as we are doing so without any shade of judgment, with hearts full of gratitude for all of the rich, again, I'm going to come back to this word of this tapestry word, right? This tapestry metaphor. It's like we're all so unique and different and diverse, and we make up this beautiful tapestry of womanhood and sisterhood. And you're not only a true woman if you are a mother and wife, right? You are a true woman as long as you are stepping into the power of womanhood and what that means in terms of blessing everybody around you in that rich tapestry. And so, yeah, I would say connect with each other, lift each other up, celebrate each other's successes, and enjoy life.
Thank you. Honestly, Erica, this has been a blessing for me. You inspire me, truly.
I'm so glad.
Well, and thank you everybody for listening. And yeah, we appreciate having Erica on today, and hope everybody has a wonderful day.
Thanks, Lindsay.